Welcome to this episode of the Million Dollar Mastermind, where we get real world insights on winning from people who have accomplished amazing things. I'm your host, Larry Weidel, and let's get going. I'm talking with Mike Watts, and we're getting ready to have a lot of fun. Hey, Mike.
Hey, Larry, how are you today?
Good. They make shows on TV about serial killers, but they should make more shows about serial entrepreneurs, and you'd be right in there.
Yeah, that's right. I would definitely be in line for casting calls. So.
Yeah, and it probably would be a whole heck of a lot more interesting and would certainly do a whole lot more good. You've got, according to my info, got 6 companies already under your belt, generating over 50 million total revenue. That's a big deal. That's hard to generate any money, much less 50 million. Congratulations, man.
Thank you. Yeah, the first few dollars were surely the hardest. Definitely learned a little bit along the way.
And so you've got 3 consecutive multi-million-dollar companies in the last 10 years, and struck a deal with Damon John from Shark Tank, and we're going to talk about that. A 2-time winner of the Aggie 100 award. Are we talking about Texas A&M?
Texas A&M, yes,
Texas
sir.
A&M Aggie. Oh, so I noticed kind of the color of your shirt there.
I came prepared.
Yeah, and right now you're founder and president of Love Handle, and it's a fast growing American manufacturer of custom patented custom smartphone grips, generated estimated 5 million in revenue, seen in QVC and HSN. And what's Pivotrim? What's that?
Pivotrim it's an aftermarket weed eater head. Some of your listeners might have seen it before, and it was my first really big company we started, and you just put it on your weed eater and the line won't break. It solves the problem of winding line on trimmers,
right,
and feeding it out and breaking off. And so that was my first real big win.
Wow. Unbelievable. So you've, your mind obviously is always working, and it's kind of like interview with Elon Musk, where he said, since someone asked him, do these ideas keep coming to you? He said, yes, since I was a child. Every day, all day long, hour by hour, ideas keep coming in my head. And he said, you do not want to be me.
Inside the mind. The great Elon.
Because, it's like, what do you do with all these ideas? And but you obviously have the mind of, at this point, you've got experience and contacts and this, that, and the other, but when did that come to you? How early in your life did you get going on the inventor type entrepreneurial, I like to make new things?
Yeah, well, early, I think entrepreneurship is a bit of a blood type. And so for me, I've always had that. I never really had my own product until later on in my career. But in middle school, I was the guy selling now and laters and blow pops. Before I even got into high school, I had a.
How did you get that idea? How did you get that? I mean, I'm just really curious. How did you get the idea? I'm just going to make some money and get this. Would you put it in a bag? You carry it. Go by the Dollar General store and stock up, and then before you went to school. How do you do that?
Well, I think growing up, we really didn't have a lot of money extra. And I liked having it. I knew I liked to have money. And there was times that I wanted to have a little jingle in my pocket, and I didn't. And so, my mom was always a believer in me and would let me run down any of those crazy ideas, I guess, like Elon's mom did for him. But I always saw people wanting candy at school. And I figured, well, that's where I've got to be anyway. And I was with her at the Sam's Club, and we were walking down the aisles, and they had these enormous boxes of blow pops you could buy, and I couldn't believe how cheap you could get them. And I did the math and I'm like, well, I think I could sell those for a quarter a piece and really get ahead. So she bought me a box of blow pops and a box of now and laters. And I threw, half of them in my backpack. And I came back home that day with pockets with what I thought was a lot of money.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where it started. So people would catcall to me from across the room. I would slide them over a blow pop. They'd slide me back a quarter. And that's how my entrepreneur career began.
And how old were you?
Oh, I was in 7th grade at that point.
Yeah.
So I was pretty young.
Yeah. And what did you do with all that money?
I spent it. I think I ate some of the profits and gave some to cute girls along the way. But, I was just out there I got into baseball cards really early and had a bit of an addiction there. It felt like the stock market to me. So I would buy a pack of cards and then see what I got and then try to trade up and then go to the baseball card shop and see what I could sell the better ones for. And I don't know. It kind of was always fun for me. So,
yeah. When did you get the idea? I've heard it said before that, and, may have talked about it on the podcast, but like one of the best things you can do for kids growing up is give them the chance to make their own money, have the experience of making their own money. And so how did that, looking back, how do you think that galvanized you? What effect did that have on you?
I think it's like riding a bike or, surfing a surfboard or whatever. Like it's a feeling that you get and you like it. You just want to get more of it. And it was funny because I was in this education system that was telling me to do all these certain things and that at the end of the game, I would be able to make some money. And I thought it was pretty cool. I was able to do it early on, even outside the school system. And so, for me, I really liked the idea of the independence of doing it my way. And I just was the way I think, God made me. And
so you moved up through the ranks. What did you graduate onto from the baseball cards and because these are things that, it's just like in a business, you have success, you talk to people, ideas jump into your head, you investigate, some you spend more time on than others, but you're always moving forward. How did the dominoes play out for you?
Well, for me, it was just situational, right? So I had one more kind of interesting story in high school. We had at our high school, you could go to off-campus lunch, but only if you were a senior. And of course, I was a junior, and some of my friends were older, and they all got to leave. And so the only thing between me and off-campus lunch was this little yellow card. So I was like, well, I could make something like that. So I had a little side hustle for a very short minute, where I was making senior IDs first for myself, and then my friends wanted them. And so next thing you know, I had a little business where I was selling senior IDs. Of course, that didn't last long before somebody ratted me out because my prices are too high, and ended that. And I ended up in school suspension. So I figured out a lesson there nonetheless, that not all businesses are made equal, and maybe just stay within the lines for the next try.
Yeah. Well, it's better than being down in a juvie,
Yeah.
You started to do your record,
Yeah.
It diverted you from a life of crime right off the bat there. So, so now how did it play out?
Yeah. So after that, I actually, for a while, got onto the traditional path, right? I worked real hard in high school so I could get into a good college, the best college, really. We talked about Texas A&M and spent 5 glorious years getting a 4-year degree and had a wonderful time along the way. But what I did is actually had 13 different jobs along the way. I had just kind of bounced around. I always liked new experiences. And it wasn't until after I got into corporate America, started a family, that entrepreneurship came back into my line of sight as a path. And really, for me, visually the only path for me and my wife to meet the goal of changing it from a 2-income family to a 1-income family, so that she could stay home and invest in our children and our family, and then I could be the breadwinner.
And how did you came to that conclusion? But you can't do that without an idea, without some kind of thing to do,
Right.
So how did that come to you?
Well, we knew what we wanted to do. In fact, she bought me a book that started along called Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Right.
Great book, and it helped us understand, cash flow and how to make money more creatively. And so we were actually on the hunt specifically for a product. My parents have always been fantastic mentors, and they had started a party rental business on the side. And so we went and sat down with them and asked them what we should do. And somebody had just come into their shop with a product that we later called Rain Sorb, but it's a crystalline product that you can mix with water, and it'll soak up water, and it makes a great clear kind of a gel, and you can make a centerpiece out of it. You could color it. You could put floating candles. You could even figure it out later where you could arrange flowers, put it in your plants. And so it was this really neat substance that most people hadn't seen. So we started bagging that up, and we started going to home and garden trade shows, my wife and I, on the weekends. And we built our own first brand and company, and built a business where we could make money on the weekend. And then it had a mail order component too, where they would write in and buy a new bag of Rain Sorb when they needed it. And so that was the beginning of our entrepreneurial journey as a family.
So what did you learn? I mean, was this stuff that you couldn't get any other place, or nobody had thought of it, or what was that unique?
Well, I honestly don't know what the original purpose of it. Today, it's known as like Orbeez. People use it for, and little, guns for Orbeez. And then Soil Moist was my main competitor back then, but they weren't even around when I started. It was just by happenstance I found the product.
Yeah.
We bagged it up, gave it a brand name. Even before domains even existed, we had a way for people to reorder it. But the problem with that business was that I've always been like pretty charismatic and bold, and so I was able to stop people in the aisles of the trade show and show them this cool stuff and close the deal, and I'd pass them down to her, and she would take the money. And we just kept doing that. I mean, to the point that we had our 2-year-old son underneath the table. Nobody ever knew he was there. He's down there watching Veggie Tales, and we're out traveling around on the weekends, and we've got our side business. It was a really special time, but the limiting factor was only I was the only one that was really able to sell it well. So I wasn't able to, I was still trading time for dollars.
Yeah. And so how did you leverage, a lot of this stuff is leverage. You picked up, what are the things that you picked up that you'd say would be priceless pieces of information, skills, contacts from that experience that you use going forward?
I would say definitely the presentation of a product, and being able to understand. My dad always says that a presentation or a presentation without a demonstration is nothing more than a conversation. So I figured out that, without a great pitch and understanding how to communicate value in under 30 seconds to someone was key. And so I got a lot of practice at that. And I think most importantly, started to understand the attributes of products. What are good and bad attributes? Demonstration is certainly one, but does the product potentially have a home on the shelf? How is the consumer going to be able to understand how this works? Are there competitors? What's the margin like? And is it breakable and shippable? And all those little small attributes that can totally kill a good idea and make it not a good business. I started to learn those kind of the hard way.
And how did you decide to move forward? How many steps, how many products did you evaluate when you said, we need to move forward, we need to get something bigger, better, more potential, where I don't have to run around with my wife and baby and filling the orders while I'm out roaming the aisles, making sales. How did you move forward from that?
Well, we started cycling through different products, right? So I always had my eyes open, and I learned how to sell, honestly, from a lot of the people around me. And how I noticed that there was a lot of shows that they sell cookware, right? And I would watch that guys, and those guys are masters. They're over there, they have people writing down, and they're engaged. And I noticed that they would go through their pitch, and it might be 30 minutes long. But in the end, they might just make 2 sales, but their sales were around $3,000 a piece.
Yeah.
So I started understanding that the price ticket matters. When I first started selling the rain sword, the first bags I was selling for $3 a piece or 2 for 5. And I was quickly learned the lesson that if you're gonna sell something, you better sell something a little bit higher priced. And so, and then move on to like something that is relevant to everyone, right? Like cookware is a
Right.
great example. Everybody has a kitchen, everybody needs to eat. And I started just physically learning these attributes. We cycled through, I sold t-shirts, I sold Lucky Bamboo, I sold hand carved wooden airplanes, cars, and motorcycles I brought in out of Vietnam. Ended up setting up mall kiosks. I lost a few Christmases along the way, sitting out there in a mall kiosk, listening to Mariah Carey music and trying to sell my products out there. And we just kept moving through products until eventually I got so frustrated because every time I would find a win, Larry, there would be somebody else that would see it and say, oh, that's the product. That's why he's doing so well over there. And they would go find the product. And the next show I went to or next mall I was in, there would be somebody selling the same thing right across from me. And so we committed that the next product that we took on was going to be something we could control. And the only way to do that is through patents. And so that's when I got into the patent licensing business.
And so that's one thing to say that is another thing to do it.
Absolutely.
I mean, it is a big deal to learn how to patent it and license and, the technical side of that. But again, coming up with the idea is a whole nother mindset. I mean, you need to think in a different kind of way. And a lot of times you hear people have gone through a zillion ideas and they can come up with a winner. But how did you you had to transition into the guy who came up with the ideas, or you had to learn how to find them?
That's it. So the day that I remember was most profound to me was we were at the Houston Home and Garden Show, our local show, the big event. And I actually had 4 booths at this show. And I had people helping me in different booths selling, like I said, the wooden airplanes in one booth. We had 2 locations with the yard art, which was very popular at the time. And then we had my rain sword booth, which was the one I worked at because again, I was the only one that could effectively sell it. And I'm walking between my booths and I ran across this product that a guy had presenting and would later become the Pivotrim. It was an aftermarket weed eater head, but what caught my attention was that he had a plexiglass box, and inside the box was a chain link fence. And he was sitting there taking his weed whacker. He had an electric weed whacker, and he was running it into the fence over and over and over again, demonstrating that the line would break off. Mm-hmm. And that very morning, I had been out cutting my own grass and fighting with the weed eater head. I don't know if you've ever done that before, but it's very frustrating. And I talked to him and I was like, hey man, first off, I need one of these in my life.
Right.
And tell me more about your product. Tell me more about your story. Turns out he's an inventor. Originally he was from Nicaragua and narrowly escaped out of the Sandinista war and came up and ended up in New Orleans. And he just he's a fidgeter, a gadget guy, but he barely spoke English. I speak Spanish, so that helped. And we were able to understand that he had filed for patents on this idea, but we didn't know what to do with it. I took him around and showed him all my booths and said, look what I'm up to. I'm a marketer. I'm looking for great products. Let's talk. So that's where it kind of all began. We figured out how to create a license deal. Neither one of us had ever done it, where I would take over the rights to his intellectual property. And that's what we did. I left my job, mortgaged my house, cashed in my pension, my 401k, everything else, and put it into this idea because the timing for us felt right. And my wife and I decided that we're going to take our shot. We're going to do it now. And so off we went.
That wraps up this episode. Consider leaving a rating and review if you like what you heard. In addition, I have a free video for you, and it contains my best insights from 20 years of running my own business and also coaching $1 million earners. You'll find it at whiteelonwinning.com/webinar. Thanks for listening, and do it big.